They are called many names: white monopoly capital, apartheid enablers, and land thieves. This is the life of South Africa's second richest family. They own 720 square miles of conservation land across South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. Who is this billion-dollar South African family? Ernest Oppenheimer was elected chairman of De Beers in 1929. Ernest's son, Harry Oppenheimer, joined the De Beers board in 1934 and succeeded his father as chairman following his death in 1957. This is the history of the Oppenheimer generational wealth from generation to generation. Nicky Oppenheimer, a South African businessman who joined the Anglo American Corporation in 1968, serving as a director from 1974 until his retirement in 2011, and as deputy chairman from 1983 to 2001. In 1985, Nicky became chairman of the Diamond Trading Company and deputy chairman of De Beers Consolidated Mines. Most of us are familiar with the basic outline of the story of South African apartheid from the late 1940s until the 1990s, a system designed to protect and entrench white minority rule, enforced racial segregation, systemic discrimination, and violent oppression against black South Africans. Less familiar, however, is the story of those who funded, supported, and benefited from this system, who provided the funding for the white supremacist minority to enforce their dominance. What became of the capital gained through the brutal exploitation of black labor? And how does the legacy of this dark period of human history continue to play out in the global economy of today? While the answers to these questions are far-reaching and could fill several books, one example provides a very telling illustration of how the exploitation of the global South and Southern Africa in particular continues along colonial lines that connect directly with the exploitative and abusive history of apartheid. Founded in 1917 by Ernest Oppenheimer, the company known today as Anglo American plc was originally the Anglo American Corporation of South Africa, with political and financial backing from both the British and U.S. governments. Oppenheimer's company quickly set about consolidating control of the richest gold fields in South Africa before moving on to acquire majority ownership of Cecil Rhodes Diamond Empire De Beers, while the nation remained part of the British Empire until 1961. South Africa had established its independence in 1910, along with its own whites-only government. As a wealthy and rapidly growing entity, the new Anglo American Group developed deep and lasting ties with a relatively young government apparatus, and by the time apartheid became official policy in 1948, the company had emerged as a key player in South Africa's economy, along with its stranglehold on gold and diamonds. Anglo American also had vast holdings in copper and had become a driving force of the industrialization of the region at the cost of starvation wages and racial discrimination, with influence extending to multiple sectors including finance, agriculture, and manufacturing. Mid-century Anglo American was a pillar of South African wealth and power, and one that would continue to benefit from the oppression of black South Africans. Throughout the apartheid regime, mining formed the backbone of South Africa's economy. As elsewhere in the country, black workers in the mining industry were treated as second-class citizens, and as it continued to grow its wealth and influence, Anglo American relied heavily on the labor of people it could treat worse and pay less than its white employees. The company's labor practices perpetuated a system of racial inequality, where black workers were systematically marginalized and treated as disposable commodities. They were subjected to grueling work hours, inadequate safety measures, and minimal access to health care. Efforts by black workers to unionize and advocate for their rights in this period were suppressed, with Anglo American leveraging its economic power and influence with the state whenever intervention was required to protect its interests. By 1970, the Anglo Group owned South Africa's 5 biggest mining houses, as well as major shares in 5 of the top 10 companies in the manufacturing industry. In terms of market capitalization value, 8 of South Africa's 10 largest companies belong to Anglo American. By the fall of apartheid in 1994, Anglo American controlled more than half of all private industry in South Africa. When white minority political rule finally ended, the prospect of nationalization threatened the company. Using a subsidiary called Minorco Minerals and Resources Corporation, Anglo American attempted to downplay its connection with the apartheid regime while transferring assets and intensifying its global expansion into Europe, the Americas, and Australia. While it's certainly true that Anglo American was not the only corporation to benefit from the racial segregation of South Africa, its size, position, and influence single it out as a useful case study. The resources it provided the South African state enabled a system of racial discrimination, economic exploitation, and social injustice. Its collaboration with this system in turn enabled the Anglo American to exploit black labor and to continue to grow. Without its foundations in colonialism and exploitation, without the legal enabling of its labor practices and abuses, how could Anglo American become the global 33 billion giant it is today? The money made in South Africa in the 20th century continues to circulate in the mining economy and continues to give Anglo American the power and influence it wields today. Currently, the company has 56 operations in 15 different countries, mainly in Southern Africa, South America, and Australia, and operates under the motto Reimagining Mining to Improve People's Lives. While it has done a lot of work to clean up its image, there are many who feel that Anglo American has not improved their lives in any way. Accusations of workers' rights abuses, environmental damage, pollution, and unethical practices continue to follow the company across the globe. The Oppenheimer's empire is one of Southern Africa's richest families and has gained wealth through colonial conquest than racism is planning to hijack South Africa's democratic project for narrow and selfish capitalist purposes. The family is directly using the ill-gotten wealth and riches gained through colonialism and consolidated under apartheid to continue holding tremendous political sway in South Africa. The reality is that since South African Parliament's gullible promulgation of the Political Party Funding Act in 2018 that prescribes that all registered political parties must declare their funders, the Oppenheimers have captured and are funding political parties and projects. This they're doing in order to ensure that political parties' responsibility and obligation are the protection of South Africa's capitalist status quo, while massive wealth in the hands of few white people, while the majority of our people live in absolute poverty, jobless, and landless, remains unchanged. The political parties that are under the Oppenheimers' direct control and sway are the Democratic Alliance, which used to be the official opposition and now part of the Government of National Unity. Action SA is a South African political party established by a former mayor of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, soon after he left the Democratic Alliance. Rise Mzansi is a South African political party founded in April 2023. It is led by Songezo Zibi, a former newspaper editor and co-founder of the Rivonia Circle think tank, and Inkatha Freedom Party IFP, due to present and historical ties. Conveniently, these are political parties that constitute the core of the so-called multi-party coalition, and some of these have declared the economic freedom fighters as their number one enemy. The family made the following donations to the political parties and projects in their control. On the 14th of May 2021, Mary Slacks, granddaughter of Ernest Oppenheimer, made a donation of $15 million to the Democratic Alliance. On the 16th of September 2021, Rebecca Oppenheimer made a monetary donation of $3 million to Action SA. On the 17th of September 2021, Victoria Freudenheim made a donation of $3.3 million to Action SA again. On the 19th of September 2021, Jessica Slack-Gell, granddaughter of Harry and Bridget Oppenheimer, also made a monetary donation of $3.3 million to Action SA. On the 8th of October 2022, Nicolas Frank Oppenheimer made a monetary donation of $500,000 to the Democratic Alliance. The IIFP has historical ties to the Oppenheimer family through its founding president Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who accepted a $5 million donation from Harry Oppenheimer in the 1970s to establish Mangosuthu Technikon, currently known as Mangosuthu University of Technology. The proximity of the Oppenheimers to the IFP and Mangosuthu Buthelezi was demonstrated and evidenced during his funeral in Yolandi, where the Oppenheimers were playing a visible and present role in his send-off. In Parliament, the IFP consistently aligns with the Democratic Alliance, advocating for reforms that oppose the interests of black people and challenging progressive legislation at every opportunity. The African National Congress ANC has moved away from the leftist politics over the years, and the party under President Cyril Ramaphosa has completely abandoned the African people. The African National Congress, through the so-called Government of National Unity, is slowly abandoning the African Revolution and neglecting the transformational agenda that is necessary to level up the plateau between black and white in South Africa. It is alleged that the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has captured the African National Congress, which earned it the name ANC of Ramaphosa, and that Cyril is a project and puppet of the white monopoly capital Stellenbosch Mafia and Oppenheimer family. Now that the white monopoly capital, a part of the executive in South Africa, and Cyril Ramaphosa has given them piece of the governance of South Africa, black people, the poor, will become poorer, while the rich, white rich, become richer. Large amounts of land is still in the hands of white families like the Oppenheimer family, while black people in South Africa continuing without land and dignity. Thank you for watching the Bongani Menza YouTube channel.